Welcome to the Once Upon a Sketch podcast. I'm Wilson Williams Jr.
And I'm Norman Grock.
In our podcast series, we'll be presenting interviews, insights, education, and news about the many facets of the children's illustration market, from children's books to character design, storyboarding, toys, and licensed products. We'll use our quest for knowledge to help educate you on your journey to success.
Hello and good day to our listeners. Norm and I are happy to host our first roundtable discussion. We thought it would be a good idea to not only interview people within the children's market, but to also entertain conversations where professionals in various stages of their careers could give input on the events in the larger world that affect our work and careers. So without further ado, we are happy to welcome to our roundtable Mary Reaves Uhles.
Hello.
Chris Jones.
Hello.
And Donald Wu.
Hi.
Alrighty, guys. Well, today we wanted to discuss the changing scenery in the children's market. Due to the economy, technology changes, and international labor opportunities, many are seeing drastic changes in work availability. So we wanted to talk about what we can do as illustrators and how we're dealing with things as illustrators to handle those changes and how those different things have affected us individually within our personal businesses. So a lot of this conversation was brought on by, I read a couple of articles from agents and reps and had a conversation with my rep about the different things that are affecting our industry. You know, the fact that the economic crisis and things of that nature are having like a domino effect within our industry. Something that's considered the bread and butter of the children's book market is the educational industry. And with a lot of budgets being cut, a lot of schools' budgets are being cut as well. A lot of the educational programs are some of the first things to go. And that means that a lot of schools don't have the money to buy newer materials, curriculum, books, and things of that nature. And since the schools can't buy a lot of those things, that in turn results in newer materials not being able to be produced because there's not the financial backing for it, which in turn means that we don't get to work, or at least not as much as we used to at different points. And then there's many other things that are happening within the industry, the advent of technology, changes in a lot of closing of the brick and mortar stores as far as bookstores, things like that are concerned. So, and a lot of those things have a very significant impact on the children's market. So we wanted to kind of talk with some people within the industry who are at various stages of success, either beginning or well-established, with reps and don't have reps, to kind of see how those things are affecting everybody. So let me see. Chris, you don't have a rep, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And how many of you do or don't? I know Chris doesn't. Mary, Donald does.
Well, I have a rep, like I had said earlier, she reps me on a limited basis to the educational market.
And Norm and I both do have a rep. So how have you guys seen within the past few years a significant change in work availability due to the economic crisis within the country?
I personally have. I think when I first started out, which was back in 2006, 2007, I think there was almost an overabundance of jobs available, and I don't see that as the case so much this past year.
Is it every market, Don, or is it just
it's educational? Oh, well, actually, I think the children's market. I think in general, you could say that in general, but yeah, and that would definitely include the educational market as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with some of what you were saying about the funding falling off. I think that's affected it, and just I also think that those publishers started. If you go back to the time when work for hire became such a big deal, I think those publishers were still doing the same work, but now they were trying to repurpose illustrations that we might have done, 2 or 3 years earlier. You know what I'm saying? So whereas they might still want my style, they've got my illustration from some other project, and they can, try to work with it. I will say that one thing I noticed, and I wasn't, necessarily happy about this, but I wasn't necessarily unhappy about it, is that I was getting asked to fill in illustrations. Like, they would send me a book and they would say, here we have, this is the manuscript or whatever. And then they would have taken an illustration that I had done like a year or two earlier, fitted here, and then they were commissioning me to fill in the illustrations they didn't have. So it still resulted in work, not as much work, but they wanted my style, and at least they weren't going to another illustrator and saying, hey, can you copy this person's style? They were coming back to me and doing that. But, I agree with Donald that, like, in 2006 was a very different market than what it is right now.
Yeah, and also, I also noticed a difference in the budgets as well. I think, across the board, I think budgets have been, down even back from what it was, in the years past. So.
Either down or staying the same. I mean, that's one thing I've noticed. It's like, I don't know how long you guys have been at this. I'm maybe feeling a little bit like the old person here because I've been freelancing since '98, and I can tell you, like, the illustration, like the budgets that I've gotten. I mean, they've gone down. Some of them have gone down, but more than not, what I've seen is they've stayed the same. And so, like, what you would get in 2000 or 2002 is not the same as what you would get. Like, that same amount of money does not go as far in 2010 or 2013 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I was told straight up by my rep that the amount of money that we used to ask for in illustration, we just can't get anymore. You can't ask for that. You're not going to get that, because she was saying that there's so many different overseas markets where they can go and find other illustrators that, for me, $200 isn't a lot of money, but for them, $200 is quite a bit. So they can get the work done in different places internationally significantly cheaper than what they can get it from us. So it was kind of like, if you want to get any work at all, you kind of have to take what people are offering, and it was already for education. It was kind of, the thing with educational work was it didn't pay as much, but there was always a much larger abundance of work available within that market. So it kind of balanced itself out. You might not get paid as much, but you got a much higher volume. And even that's sort of dwindling back now, and it's not as available. And even the prices on that are coming down. They're not paying as much for that stuff as they used to. So it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like pre-2008, I'm thinking, for me, I noticed that the budgets have gone down. The work, I think the last couple of years, the work's kind of been the same for me, but I've noticed, it's just not, I'd have to do more work to make the same amount of money.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think of it. Like, I know it took me, I kind of came to that realization a couple of years ago, and I was, like, at the time very frustrated because I'm like, what is wrong? What am I doing wrong? And then I was like, no, it's just, this is happening to everybody. Everybody is having to do more work to make the same amount of money.
What ways have you guys, because the way that I'm thinking about it, when I look at these things and seeing a lot less work available, the prices are going down for it, for the work that is available, I'm thinking much more in terms of residual forms of income, and that starts to steer me into a direction of some of the things that I know many illustrators feel have helped to destroy the illustration profession. When you start looking at things like clip art, and things of that nature, things that you can create and produce and put out there for sale that you can get. Once you've created it, put it out, you can still continue to get income from it from this point going forward. You can always see a check coming from those things, which is what residual income would be. And it kind of puts me on the fence. It's like, how much am I potentially, saying, yes, I'll have a source of income from creating these types of things to try to help myself make it through. But how much am I digging, a hole for myself as well by creating work that my clients can get cheaper? It's still me. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, am I shooting myself in the foot by creating this alternative source of income? And how many other people are also being hurt by the fact that I'm creating this alternative source of income that I know many within the illustration market are dead set against doing that type of thing.
Yeah. Personally, I'm against it. I don't necessarily I don't see how anyone can really make money off of it. It seems like it's something the companies will get the money, but you, on the other hand, I feel like you're probably only going to get like a fraction of what they're taking.
So that's more like I guess like the app model, right? Where you go more for volume as opposed to like, I don't know, charging a ton of money for it. You charge a little bit and hope that people buy it like 200 times, right?
Right.
Yeah, like it's the difference between having 1,000 people standing there with $1 or one person standing there with $1,000. It's easy to replace one of the people with $1.
Right.
I do, like, I would worry about that. I don't really look at, like, I don't really try to create work like strictly for like stock or something like that now. Like I don't do that, like creating fresh work for that. But I have looked back at, all the work that I have that I, have the rights to use. It's been used in its project. It's basically gathering dust over here in my closet. And tried to figure out ways to go back and either put that, through stock license portals or, try to figure out how to give it another life, basically. Because it isn't going to get sold again for another project, but it is work that I own the rights to. So it's worth something. And this has been a very hit or miss. It's not like I have turned this into a gold mine or anything. But I do think it's something, like, I think if you have work, it's a good thing to do with it. Like, to sort of keep that in the back of your mind while you're working on a project and then it gets published and then it's done. And, like, 5 years later to think, what could I do with this? Everything from either putting it on a stock site or, like, I've sold stuff on Etsy and I was in a gallery for a little while, just sort of, like, thinking outside the box of, get commissioned for a project, do the project, get paid for the project, the end. Like trying to give stuff another life.
So those are like two separate things, though, right? Like one is like Etsy, where you're saying like those would be more like prints, right? Selling like individual copies of the pictures, and then the stock sites would be more like selling it for publications or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, essentially, in the long run, they're kind of the same thing, because you're still selling, like, if it's a stock site, instead of sending them an actual thing, they're getting the download, If it's Etsy, then you've got to come up with the actual thing to sell them. But it's the same thing in that you still have the same original piece, you're selling it over and over again. And I do think with Etsy, you have to have you have to be able to pay attention to the business side of things, because there's more, you're giving a tangible thing, so you have a lot more quality control you have to pay attention to. Whereas with the stock site, you've uploaded, it's done, that's the end of it. But like my problem with that, and this is just me personally, is my stuff doesn't really look like stock because it was created for a specific project. So it's harder for me. I don't know. I found some work that works for that, and then other work, it seems like it works better to hang in someone's nursery. So, if that goes more on Etsy than it does anywhere else.
Yeah, that's my problem with it, because what we do is so specific. I feel like for it to cater to stock art, it has to you have to basically take away everything that makes it unique, everything that makes it appealing.
I think unfortunately, it seems like the reason I've started to have to look into a lot of those different things is, like we're saying, it's just because of the state of the industry. So I've had to look at a lot more ways that my style of artwork fits into other places and doing other things, like character design, like storyboarding, like graphic novel phenomenon, like doing ebooks and things of that nature where you can self-publish. I've just started to have to look toy design, board game design. There's a lot of different things out there that we can do that are still children's market, that aren't specifically just doing the magazines, educational, and trade books for bigger publishers. I've had to start looking into a lot of those. The only problem with that is every single one of those different things that I listed, you need a completely different portfolio for every single one of those things if it's something that you want to get into. And for some of the things that are going to be more self-generated, like doing the ebooks or your own online comic strip or whatever the case may be, you also need to be a marketing very knowledgeable as far as marketing and self-promotion and all of those types of things. There's a lot of factors that come in that are in addition to also being at least a up-to-par artist to make yourself successful and make yourself able to work and draw income from doing those different things. But I've had to seriously look at all of those different options to make sure that within a year from now or for a couple of years from now that I'll still be able to generate income from myself, and I'm not reliant on just one aspect of the children's market.
And I bet you selfishly want to sleep too, Wilson. I mean, that's just...
Well, see, the only benefit that I have is like all of you guys have children. I don't know how in the world y'all get any work done. So I feel bad sometimes, because I know I speak with Norm on more than one occasion where he's trying to figure out, with a new kid and all of that kind of stuff, you're trying to figure out where do I find the time to still do the work that I need to do for clients, and also still do work for myself that I enjoy personally, and still have time for all the other things that you want to do. I imagine it's a huge balancing act, especially for when you're working from home and stuff like that. It's a difficult situation. But Chris, I know you do graphic novels, you've done online comics and things like that, right?
Yeah.
How have those projects and things worked out for you, and have they ever helped to expand on different work that you found in other places?
Yep. Well, a couple of comics I've done have been collaborations with different authors, and one of the authors has a pretty popular webcomic. This is a very large audience, and I've worked with him on numerous projects of his own, and he does a lot of Kickstarter stuff. And he's one of those guys who raises a lot of money on Kickstarter, and I kind of work on him with this and that. So I've kind of got a bit of work that way as well. That's not in my regular children's market. So it's kind of a different avenue where collaborating can lead to other sources of income as well.
How did you hook up with this person? Like, how did you find them, and how did you determine that they'd be someone good to work with?
Probably about 6 years ago. He was advertising, he had a script and he wanted an artist, and I just contacted him and we started working together. And it was Captain Stupendous. It was Captain Excelsior before, and we just collaborated on that, and we went and published that, and then we just started working on other projects together. And it's more just working on your main bread and butter projects, and then doing creator-owned projects on the side, and hopefully making money on them, in the long term. So just trying to split between those two things.
And sometimes those things can turn into bigger book deals. Like me and Norm just got through interviewing Mike Mayhack, who did an online comic, Cleopatra in Space. And through him being at a convention, he published, I think, how many issues did he get in, Norm? Like about 3 3 or 4 issues that he posted online, and he was at a convention, and somebody came by and looked at his stuff, and it turned out that guy was a representative from Scholastic, and Scholastic picked up his book, and now he's getting his stuff published through them, so you just never know who's going to run across your stuff or what. That seems to be the way that things are going nowadays. It seems like a lot of things are, you create something, you put it out there, and the publishers come and find you, much more so now than you sending stuff to a publisher, because I guess they're getting so deluged with stuff that it's like, if you can make enough of a noise about the work that you're creating and get enough people liking and looking and tumbling and Pinteresting your work that it gets your stuff in front of those people's eyes. That's like the new way to get the publishers to come to you, rather than you having to do all the work trying to get to them. But that requires you as the artist to start and create all of those things yourself, which is a lot of work. It's no easy task coming up with web comics and all that kind of stuff to produce on a daily basis, or a weekly basis, even on top of the other work that you need to do that you're actually getting paid for.
Yeah.
And a lot of those publishers now have imprints that are specifically comics for kids or graphic design, graphic novel imprints. Sorry, they split off and just do graphic novels in this one imprint. So there's a whole little niche market for that's kind of offshooting off children's books. Like Scholastic has their graphics, one with the X on the end. They publish a whole bunch of graphic novels.
Yeah, because I think Scholastic has found, a lot of them have found, from what I understand, is that graphic novels are a great way to transition kids into reading novels. That's become that step. After picture books, they go to graphic novels, and then they go into novels. And it's also a great way, from what I understand, to transition boys into reading books and novels. Boys are a lot more likely to read graphic novels before moving into, full-out chapter books and things of that nature. So a lot of that stuff is increasing in, like Chris is saying, increasing in popularity. And you're seeing a lot of that stuff getting adapted into movies and television shows and all of that type of stuff. So those things are definitely growing in different ways.
Chris, I see that one of your books is published by IDW. How did that come about? And do you see is the book still in print? Is it still out there for people to purchase? And is there any do you see any money coming back? Since it's been out there for a while.
Let me see. Okay, we published that. That was the comic. We published that online first, so we did that. We did 1 page a week. It took 2.5 years, and then we shopped it around, and IDW decided to publish it. It was great. We got that. It took another year. We got it published, and it was an okay experience. I mean, it wasn't. You think, oh well, once I get published, it's gravy, but it wasn't. As much as I thought it was going to be, but. It was a good experience. It was a learning experience, and They only did 1 print run, and they didn't do a lot, so it wasn't a large one. But they never did a second one for us. We wanted to have copies for conventions and stuff, but we only got a small run. So it wasn't as good an experience as I would have hoped it would be, which kind of put me off publishing through a traditional publisher. Hence the move towards Kickstarter type projects and self-publishing. But I guess it all depends on the publisher, what kind of comic you're publishing with them. But
cool. Yeah. I was just curious because I was just checking out your stuff and saw that. So,
well, Don, what's the name of the rep that you're with?
I'm with MB Artists.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that they're out of New York.
Now, see, the misnomer that we were talking before we started recording the podcast, we were talking about some of the misnomers, like, thinking that once you have a rep, it'll all be gravy and you'll just have all this work coming to you. It's like, that's not true. And then there was the other misnomer that I had, that once I had that one published hardback children's book under my belt, that all the offers would start coming in, and that's not true either.
Yeah.
So, but you're among us. I know you're the one that has the most hardback children's books published. How do you credit most of that to your agent, or was there anything that you had to actively do to help foster that?
Oh no, yeah, it was definitely my rep. I mean, she pretty much, tracked down everyone and to send me the manuscript. So it was very much her, her effort. And so I kind of owe her, quite a bit of, credit for that.
Now, have you seen the numbers go down on those offers as well as you have seen with the education?
Yeah, I think the same thing applies. The budgets have gone down, and then other things like royalties and the type of contracts you would sign. I think those have kind of varied. So.
Oh, what kind of difference have you seen in the?
Well, some of the books, like my newest books, those were just done without royalties. So, and I'm not sure, if years past, if that would have been the case. Like, if that was something I would be entitled to, I would keep the rights to. But, it wasn't in this case.
So are you saying, because there's a difference between, actually giving up the rights versus just being paid a flat fee, but you retain rights?
It was flat. It was my newest books. I just got a flat fee.
Okay, but you didn't have to sign away your rights. You basically gave up North American book rights for it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you still have ebook rights and all of that kind of stuff. So that if they come back and decide to do something different with it, then you can still. Because I know that there was a fear at one point that somebody posted, I can't remember the name of the publisher, posted a contract where the publisher was only going to do a flat rate, but then they wanted universal, to infinity rights to everything with no royalties or anything. And the article was saying that was a trend that a lot of publishers were moving towards. And that was just it made my stomach drop. So it's good to hear that that's not the case, at least, that it's not quite to that extreme. But I would imagine that we are going to see some level of adjustment to try to make it work to their benefit as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, from what I hear from my rep is that like everything else, a lot of publishers are scaling back what they print out during the course of a year. So it is going to be harder for especially new illustrators to kind of get a hardback that picture book that everyone wants. So
it's that dream upon dreams.
Yeah.
The other thing that that is a big change within our industry, and I don't normally agree with this, is that it used to be you sent out your postcards, your little packages, and you made your phone calls to get work, and that was enough. Now it's with the social media aspect of things. It feels like I have to spend a good portion of my day on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. What else is there? Deviant, LinkedIn. You have to be in all of these places putting your stuff out there just to try to get your stuff in front of people now. And I know for many of us that can be troublesome. How entrenched are all you guys in those different methods of promotion? Or do you think they're even worth it?
I know I try to limit my time on those to certain periods of the day and try to limit myself, because you could easily waste an entire day trying to keep up with all that. I'm probably not. I'm on Facebook and Twitter mostly. I try to use Instagram. But I mean, they are a huge time suck to try to keep up with all of them, especially like Pinterest and all of that.
Well, I think it Will Terry, another illustrator, recently put up an article where he was talking about how when he would send out postcards, if he sends out 100 postcards, he might get one response, out of the 100. And he said that most of the work that he's getting these days is coming from social networks. He's getting most of his job offers from Twitter, from Pinterest, and from all of those different places that he's networking socially. So, and he's not the only art illustrator that I've heard say that. So that it's starting to become, unfortunately, it seems to me, that it's becoming much more necessary rather than just an option or a possibility. It seems like, at least it does. Like at one point in time, it would have been putting yourself in those books that you could pay $1,000 for a page to put yourself in those illustration workbooks that they would send out to all the art directors. And now it seems like it's shifting a little bit towards the social networks as a means to get a hold of, because I know on Twitter you can follow all the art directors from all the different publishers in the hopes of speaking with them and beginning relationships that way and getting them to see your work that way and all that kind of. Same thing with LinkedIn and some of those other places. And I know most of you guys are on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn, you're on Pinterest.
Yeah. I'm on just about all of them, but I mean, I have like a love-hate relationship with social media because I really feel like it's like you said, it's something you get into and you get so sucked into it, and then it's like, oh no, I was going to do this illustration, or I meant to do those sketches, and so I have like really, tried to tell myself my one social media outlet that I think is the most important and that I try to, constantly keep good content on there is my blog. And then I try to let everything else either feed from that or, sort of feed to it. I cannot keep up with Pinterest at all. It sounds great. I love the concept of it, but I'm just, there again, need sleep. So I have a thing, and I have a profile. And actually what I've found it to be really useful for is if I put new stuff on Etsy and I want to start getting people to, come and buy that, then it's like, okay, now I need to spend time, really making a big to-do about it on Pinterest. But then I get into a whole thing of okay, then I get work, then I have to work, I don't have time to do all this stuff. So the one that I can keep up with, like I said, my blog is my most important thing, and that even I can track that. I can look at the analytics on my site and see that my blog is the number one thing that feeds visitors to my site. So, and then way down below that is Facebook, and then below that is Twitter. So it's I try to keep good, relevant, funny content, on that, and then I try to do a little bit of Facebook and a little bit of Twitter, but I really have gotten to the point where I have to stop myself if I, it's I get to the point of, okay, could I do the work? Could I do the work and do it really well and get the client that I want, or could I spend time scattershotting trying to get these places and not do the work that I really want to do? And so I balance back and forth between those things. Part of the year you scattershot, and then the other part of the year you're good, and you're like, oh, I'm going to do the illustration now. I'm not going to worry about all the social media stuff. So it's a constant balancing act between those. But I do agree that it's it used to be you could do this one thing or pay $1,000 to get the page in a book. Now it's you always have. It's you have to always have it in your mind. What did I do over here? What did I do over here? And you have to try to sample a little bit of everything. And just always keep your ear to the ground. I'm amazed at the conversations editors and art directors will have on Twitter. And so I find that to be incredibly useful to just find out about them. So then, if I want to tailor a pitch just to them, I can very easily go and find out what they like and what they think. And then on the other hand, it's you overhear conversations on Facebook and you can like sort of track that to, oh, okay, this person got this job, and how did they get that? Oh, they did it this way. It's like kind of like being like you're sort of being a detective there. That's the way I look at it. But it's definitely you have to change your approach depending on whatever form of social media you're talking about. At least that's the way I feel.
Has anyone found success or like a job like through one of these, whether Pinterest or through Facebook or Twitter? Because I'm kind of more old school. Like I mean, I feel like you send out postcards, then you know exactly where these things are going to. So I don't know. Has anyone actually gotten hired like through social network?
So we didn't lump YouTube into this, but I put out a video about doing ink lines on YouTube, just a tutorial video, and somebody saw it and actually offered me a job because of the video I put up. So
yeah, and I try to do this like sketchbook on my blog. I've kind of fallen behind with it this year because I've just actually been busy with work, but I had put up this one sketch of a horse, and I have gotten like 2 or 3 jobs just from this one sketch, and turned around and like sold it over and over and over again on Etsy. I mean, it's like I'll go and look at my my blog analytics, and I just put this thing up in, it's been up maybe about a year now, and that one post has gotten like, I don't know, like over 5,000 hits, and it's just that one post. So I think, but there again, would I say like, am I getting most of my jobs from this? Definitely not. I mean, actually the jobs that I've had, like this, for the last 6 months, have all come from postcard mailings, and I still do those. Like, every 3 or 4 times a year, I still do them, and I still like really, put like my best work on there. Like, to me, in my mind, that's still like my flagship of communication with potential publishers. And then hopefully whatever they see, if they go to my blog or if they go to wherever, like the content there will keep them engaged, but I still, I don't know, like I still actually think of my postcards as like my flagship thing, way to get projects.
Well, I have definitely gotten work off of LinkedIn. I've gotten work off of Facebook. I never gotten anything off of Twitter. Gotten stuff off of, and then different portfolio sites, like Behance or Deviant or the pay sites like childrensillustrators.com and stuff like that. I've definitely gotten work from. But for the stuff that's free, LinkedIn has definitely gotten me work. And even if it hasn't gotten me work, it's definitely gotten me a lot more visibility. I'm surprised when I'll send an email or something to an art director and they're like, "Oh yeah, we know who you are because we saw something you posted on LinkedIn." I'm like, "You did?"
And you're like, "Oh no, what did I say?"
It's like great plug for LinkedIn.
Yeah, but you just never know. I think, I don't know if it's that environment, because I think with LinkedIn it's more of, there's a lot more forums and different things on LinkedIn that people kind of tap into to be able to see the different things that you post. And me and Norm do a lot of promotion on Facebook and LinkedIn and different places for our blog, for Once Upon a Sketch. And I think a lot of people find us through that work sometimes too. So
what level of clients would you say that you like? What's the difference between a client, say, that you find on Facebook or one you find on LinkedIn versus one you find with a postcard? Like, how would you describe the typical client that comes to you from social media versus comes to you from Children's Illustrators or whatever?
Social media is definitely so far have been smaller clients. Have definitely been smaller clients. It's been more of the stuff that kind of goes in between the bigger jobs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
a lot of times with like the children's illustrators and things like that, a lot of times those jobs that I don't get a lot of jobs from those, but when I do get a job from that, it pays, like 5 times over what it actually costs to be on that site. But it doesn't. But that's always real fickle too, because you just never know when that email is gonna come in from one of those places, and the places like Children's Illustrators are so diluted at this point with people that, and especially in my name starts with a W and my last name starts with a W, I'm all the way at the back. So they gotta go to a lot of people before they finally get to me. So it's always kind of a crapshoot with that. I just try to do as much as I possibly can, because I just really believe, for all intents and purposes, that it's not always, it is the quality of the artwork that you do, but it's also having your stuff in the right place at the right time. Unfortunately, people, it's just trying to make sure that when that job comes along, that you're somewhere, that you manage to float across their desk, at the right time and the right moment. So I try to put myself out there as much as I possibly can, for as cheap as I possibly can too. Yeah. We don't have money to spend on a lot of different stuff. So,
does anybody else do children'sillustrators.com? I'm just curious. Like, any of you other guys do it?
I did. No.
I was on it. I just recently got off of it, and I'm on Hire an Illustrator right now. I switched to that.
I tried Hire an Illustrator for a year, but I only got a few inquiries from self-publishers, like authors wanting to self-publish. Nothing really major from myself.
Yeah.
Myself, I'm only on picture books. So.
Do you have a page in Picture Book, or are you just on the website?
I think I'm on the website now. I did the page because that was kind of one of those mandatory things with my rep. Yeah. But I think this past year she's kind of stopped doing that as well, because I think Picture Book has kind of gone down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that actually on your rep's website is that she's creating her own little picture book promotional things. She gives all of her illustrators themes for each one, for this little book that she creates to send out.
It's an actual book. Like she'll actually.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
It's
nice.
I
think it's a great idea. It's kind of like your own picture book. You don't need to go outside to some company.
You got to pay $2,000 a page to.
Yeah.
But you can create it yourself.
You're competing with these other agencies as well, so you might as well do all the legwork, and then and it looks better. I think it's a really nice idea.
Yeah, they do look nice. If you go to his, we'll throw a link up at the end on the show notes, and if you go to his rep's webpage and the artist. I'm not sure where it is on the site. I guess can you find it easily through her site? Or?
I think you look under artists, and it should be at the top. I think it'll say catalogs, I believe.
And she's got a few years worth up there, so it's neat to look through. And I was like, that's the new direction to go, and that's what I assumed it was. I assumed it was since Picture Book and all that stuff is kind of slipping to the back a little bit. She's like, just I'm gonna do it myself.
Yeah, going back to that. Yeah, when I first signed up, Picture Book was 300 pages, and it was a hardcover, I think, or something. And then after each year, the pages got less and less and less, and then the last year it was kind of ridiculous. It was just I think it wasn't even 100 pages. It was the softbound thing, and yeah. So I think that's kind of what prompted my rep to kind of do it herself.
And I think it's that type of thing that's also part of what's really pushing that whole social aspect of things now that we're all moving towards begrudgingly. Because I've even heard from some people saying, what was the post we just put up recently about Drawn? Where the guy that was doing Drawn.ca is saying that social media and everything is so dominant now that even when they're posting articles and things on their blog, by the time they post it, it's already made the rounds, through all of the different social media, so that people aren't really coming back to the blog to look, at the different articles and things that they were putting up, showcasing and featuring different different artists. So it felt like people were kind of moving away from wanting to go and look at a stationary blog every day when they go to one place and it's kind of like everything gets kind of brought into them rather than them having to go and seek out an individual person's blog or whatever the case may be. So it's a tug of war with those types of things, because you want to be able to just do things from, like you're saying, Mary, from one place. Can I just do it in one spot and kind of send it where it needs to go and be through, rather than have to cycle through five different websites to post things everywhere? And spending half of my day doing that. It's something else. It's something else.
By the way, we've tried products that say that you can post once and it shares it out to everything, and those things don't seem to work very well.
No. At least not in our experience. Maybe you guys know something that works better.
I've tried, there's this app called Buffer, which will let you post to like 3 or 4 social media networks at once, and it'll automatically time delay it to the optimum time of day for each social network, so it appears on Facebook, say at like 11:05 a.m. when it's most able to be seen, or put it on Twitter at the time of day, and you can buffer them and save them in the bank, and it'll just auto-publish them. It's pretty. I use that quite a bit.
Well,
what's that called again?
It's called Buffer. It's an Apple app. I don't know if you can get it for Android.
The only thing I will say to that, my husband actually does. He runs the Department of Tourism, the State Department of Tourism website, tnvacation.com, which is like this massive, huge website. And so he's constantly watching out for SEOs. He constantly has to keep that site, optimized as much as possible. So he's all the time coming home and telling me, blah, 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 Google's going to do this, or, it's about to hit the fan because Google's going to change the algorithm and it's going to do this. And the one big thing they did, which you guys probably have heard about this, a year ago, they basically said, the algorithm says if we detect that the same content is used over multiple sites, we will actually lower that site's rating in search engine results. So that, it kind of was supposed to get around people who were like, oh, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this here. So now it's when you put it out there, you have to change it a little bit. If you say you want to put it on your blog, and then you want to put it over here on this group blog, and then you want to do it again on this Facebook page, you have to change it a little bit. Otherwise, as soon as the algorithm picks up on the fact that it's literally the same characters, it assumes that you're trying to copy content. Doesn't care who originated it first, but you must not be a valuable page because you're pasting your content everywhere. So it lowers it in search results, which for us maybe doesn't matter as much because I still feel like illustrators, we're still kind of hitting this smaller niche. The people we're going after, it's not like we're trying to sell widgets to the masses or sell vacations to the masses or anything like that. But I still think, we've got to keep that in the back of our minds. If you have someone who's I heard about this cool illustrator, now I'm going to search for their name, or I think their name was spelled this way, and I'm going to start, searching for it. You want your, whatever content will feed back to you, you want it to come as high as possible. So that's the only thing that I've had to think about when it comes to posting and reposting content. Make sure you change it a little bit because it can backfire. It can push you down in search results.
Wow, I'm in trouble. Oh, Norm, I've been killing our website.
Sorry.
Oh, man.
Pull the door, but because I used to do what's that one? Oh, it's right on my desktop. What's the name of this thing? TweetDeck. Did you guys ever do TweetDeck where you could put all your accounts on this one thing and and it goes everywhere? It was after the advent of TweetDeck that Google decided they were going to yank that because everybody was doing it and there was no way to rate which pages were the most valuable. So as soon as TweetDeck, everybody was doing it, that's when they were, we'll get them, we'll fix this.
Okay, all right. So no more pimping. Okay, that's what we call it when we go out and do our promos for Once Upon a Sketch. I was like, all right, we got to go pimp our posts. I guess they ain't gonna be pimping no more.
Well, then you just gotta like dress it up a little bit over here. You know, put like the red spangly shoes on it on this side. Put the little headband on it over here on this side. That's what you gotta do. You gotta change it just a little bit.
Okay. Well, where do you guys see things going within our industry as far as with the different things that we've seen progressively changing throughout your different careers? Let me see, because I guess I want to be as specific as possible on what aspect, how relevant do you think, or how large do you think the pool of illustrators will remain? What do you think the things are? How will things change going forward within our industry? Do you think the children's market is going to continue to shrink, or do you think this is just something that's temporary? What are your thoughts?
Hold on, let me get out my crystal ball.
Well, I think there's some things that we're going to be talking about. At some point, we're going to be talking about Adobe, and I think there's things with that we saw coming. Like kind of a mile away. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you guys have picked up on, especially some of you that have been in the industry longer, that you kind of see the writing on the wall as far as the direction that things seem to be going as far as certain markets are concerned.
I think it's all going to tank, and everybody should get out of it and just clear the competition out for the rest of us. And
they can send all the work to you.
Yeah. That a little bit too over the top.
Well, actually, I as far as trends go, I definitely see more of a trend towards the electronics and like the e-books and digital media and all that. So.
For increasing or decreasing? Increasing.
Yeah, and I think I get maybe out of 1 out of 3 jobs, one of them has some type of digital component to it, where either the book is going to eventually be formatted for iPads or some ebook, or they want to accommodate for that. So I definitely see that.
Well, speaking of accommodating for that, that's something else. How many of you guys work traditionally? Are all of us? Mary, you work traditionally, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm like 60% traditional, and then like 40% in Photoshop. Like I scan all my stuff in. I don't mail off a piece of art. I scan it in, and then I usually like fix it up in Photoshop, pump up the colors or do little highlights or whatever, and then send a digital file. I've never actually sent, like I remember when I got started, I would hear stories of people, having to build in time to get their artwork actually to the publisher. And I still actually now hear about people who do that, like both from illustrators and publishers who talk about like having the actual artwork in their office. But yeah, I send mine all digitally. So like I tend to think like if they can get it digitally, then they're happy. If they, if you can't deliver digitally, then you might have, a little bit of an issue there. I think it's a good idea to be able to do that, whether or not you do most of it on the board or not.
Well, I know for a lot of the clients that I've run across, me doing my work in Photoshop, from sketch to finishes, a lot of them are looking for that. Like, we want a digital illustrator because they want to have that ability to come in and either edit the work easily. They want the top characters separate from the background so that they can move them if they need to. And also, like Don was saying, for the ebook applications and the digital applications, they want to have those elements separate too, so that if they want to animate them or do anything like that later on, it has that type of it has that ability, it has that flexibility. So I'm wondering if that's had an impact on you and the type of work that you could get, Mary, because since you work traditional, has that ever been an issue with the client?
No, I mean, if they need that, then they tell me, and then I do it, like on a separate layer. Like I've definitely been asked to do type on a different layer, or a particular character that they want to move off of, they want it to appear here and then over here and then over here, to do that on a different, layer. But there again, I do feel like as long as I can give them, if I didn't know how to do Photoshop at all, then I would probably be in a bad way. But I think, the fact that, if they ask me to do something, I have, I'm going to say yes. If they're like, oh, we want to be able to do this with a character, then I'm going to figure out how to do that with the character. Even though, right here sitting next to my computer, I have my drawing table. I mean, I can actually work, and this is probably just because I've been doing it this way for so long, I feel like I work faster. Like, if I were to have someone who came up and said, oh, we definitely want it to all be in Illustrator, all be in Photoshop or whatever. I mean, I would do it. I could figure out how to do it, but I feel like I can actually work faster the way that I normally do because I've just been doing it longer, But then if it is something where it's like, we want it to be formatted for an ebook at this point, because I actually have gotten here in the last year a lot of jobs. Just like Donald was saying, a lot of jobs where it's like, okay, it's going to have this print aspect, but then also this electronic aspect as well. And I just find you've got to keep that in mind from the get-go. You've got to whatever specs they're going to give you that will impact that electronic version of it, you've just got to keep it in mind. I don't put itty bitty tiny details into something that's going to be, eventually viewed on a screen that's 5 by 7 inches. Because it just doesn't really translate very well. But I would never, ever, I have hanging up over my drawing table, I've had this ever since college, it's my 10 Commandments of freelancing, and literally, I can say this thing by heart, but the very first one is never say no. And I really believe that. So, if the client comes and says, we want to do such and such, my answer is, of course I can do that, and then I figure out how, to do it.
May I ask what kind of medium you use?
I work in pencil and watercolor. For a long time I worked on illustration board, and then I actually within the last couple of years have switched back over to watercolor paper. But if you look at my studio right now, I literally have sketchbook, starting way over the wall, sketchbook, drawing table, scanner, computer. So it's almost like this little assembly line of, how my studio is laid out, how the final product gets done.
I think you're a brave soul, because I know my method of executing was in watercolors when I first started. And when I decided I wanted to go into the children's market, I've made a conscious choice to switch to being completely digital, because I was like, man, if I'm working on a watercolor, image, and they come back and want some change or something within it, I was like, I'm going to be out of luck, because I didn't have the skill level necessary to be able to really go back in and rework things. And the other thing I started to notice is that even though you were dealing with newer clients, they assume that you have many would assume that you have the same level of flexibility working traditionally that you would have if you're working digitally. If I'm working in Photoshop and you say you want this a different color, you want the background that color, and to change this to that or that or the other, it's not that difficult a thing to accomplish. But if I've got this watercolor paper and this watercolor image and you're talking about changing this to that or whatever, that's a whole different gig. So for my own sanity and my own personal fear, I switched to just having a completely digital portfolio, so that if that situation occurred in the future, I would be able to handle it. So you go.
Well, I mean, are the rest of you guys all digital? I mean, go around
when I first started, I used to work traditionally. I used to work with acrylics and color pencils, but I think back in 2008 or so, I made the transition myself, and I've gone digital, and I haven't looked back.
He's going to the dark side.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I mean, I'm just there again, I go back to the thing of, I think if I were to say, oh, I don't know anything about Photoshop, or if I were to make it a big deal and be like, can't believe they're asking me to do this. Don't they know that watercolors can't be erased? You know, then, you know, that almost says more about, like, me and how I handle the relationship. But if I'm like, I will figure out a way to do it. Once I know how to do it, I can actually make a color change pretty quickly in Photoshop, even from a scanned-in image. And I feel like once I know how to do that, once you know how to do that, then you just do it, you know. So it's kind of the same way any artist is. Like, once you figure out the shortcuts to where, you know, what needs to be done, then you just, you know, you just do it.
Yeah, I would imagine that it would be the same if an artist chooses to go that path and he chooses to stick with the traditional mediums. You'll figure out a way to make your mediums work for you to accomplish what you needed to accomplish. I was just chicken. And I was just like, I'm not even going to bother. I'm just going to go ahead and just switch out to something different.
Well, I will say this, like, the one thing that I do wonder about, but at this point it's almost like, oh, it would take me so long to change, is it probably does take me longer to do an illustration than it might someone who does it digitally. And I actually feel like I work pretty fast. Like, I can sit down, you know, once the sketch is approved, do a fairly detailed illustration in a day. I mean, that's my pace, you know. But then I'm like, I don't know, what if these digital illustrators are whipping out, like, you know, an illustration every hour and a half? You know what I'm saying? I do think there is something, like, I do think speed plays a role in this, but then I talk to other illustrators who are like, oh, it takes me 2 weeks to do one illustration. I'm like, how do you do that? But they're happy and they have clients, so, you know. But I would say that if anything, that is the one like little, you know, worry in the back of my mind is, what if speed becomes an issue here? You know, like, talking about, like, where the industry's going. What if that becomes a big deciding factor? Just how fast you can get it done. Like, that's the thing I sort of think about now. Like, how can I speeding up my process? If I were going to say that I was changing anything, it would be that. Because that is the one thing that I really do think, you know, people are going to expect you to do more. You know, it's just going to keep more and more where people are expecting you to do more work faster. And in order to make the same amount of money, you've got to take on X amount of jobs, which means you have to do them all faster than you might have used to.
Well, folks, thank you guys so much. It's obvious that we could keep talking about this forever, but let's go ahead and we'll try to wrap this conversation up. We're going to have more roundtable discussions as we go forward with this podcast and doing things on the side about different subjects and things of that nature. So we'll definitely have you guys back on for other things. But thanks again for our guests, for you guys coming on and sharing your input and information with us. So thank you to Mary. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And thank you to Donald.
Thank you.
And yeah, you too, Norm. So,
you're welcome. Can you guys briefly tell us where they can find your stuff? Let's start with Chris.
Yeah, my website is JonesID, JonesID.com. And I'm on Twitter, Mr. Jonesy.
Nice. Mary?
My website is MaryUhles.com, so MaryUhles.com, and my blog is FabulousIllustrator.com.
Thanks. Donald?
Yes, you can find me on my website, www.donaldwu.com. That's with a W-U. Or you can go to my rep, mbartist.com.
Nice. Wilson?
Oh, you can go to my website, www.illustrations.com. And you can find me on Twitter at WilsonWJr74.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today.
Well, thanks, you guys. This has actually been
Thank
great.
you. It's fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this podcast. Be sure to come by our blog to find articles, interviews, and resources to help fuel your education and growth. You can find us at onceuponasketch.com, Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube.